Push-ups are one of the fundamental exercises when it comes to calisthenics and definitely something that a lot of people want to achieve. In this video, we're going to go through the correct technique, some of the progressions that you can use to get your first push-up, and also some of the common mistakes that we see. So let's start off with our form. When we look at the correct form of a push-up, we want to look at a few different aspects. Firstly, we want to have a look at our body positioning, and we also want to pay attention to our range of motion, and then finally, the tempo at which we're working at. So let's break these down a little bit. And first up, we're going to have a look at body positioning. So when we start a push-up, we want to begin in a high plank position. You want your hands to be directly underneath your shoulders, and you want them to be around shoulder width apart so that you have enough room to bring your chest down between your hands. Something that we can often see here is that you have your bum up too high or potentially down too low. So if you're finding this, you want to think about tucking your tailbone under, creating a nice strong line in your body, and making sure those shoulders are stacked above your wrists and not too far forward and not too far back. Something else that's important to be cognizant of is your head positioning. So you don't want to have your head up too far where your eyes are looking straight ahead of you, and you don't also want to have it completely tucked in. You want to think about having your gaze around a foot in front of your hands in a nice, again, neutral spine. It's also really worth mentioning about creating some tension in your body. So you should be doing this with every exercise, and we call this intra-abdominal pressure, what traditionally is thought of as bracing your core. Here, the best way to think about it is if someone's going to come punch you in the stomach and you're going to tense up for that impact, that's the feeling that you want to create, and you want to try and maintain that throughout the entire exercise. So now we find the correct body positioning for the start of the push-up. We want to think about where we want our arms placed. So when you come down, you want your elbows to not flare out too much. We'll cover this in a second. We want to aim to have them quite close to your body or no more than 45 degrees away. Just on a quick side note, because I know I've experienced this and I see this in clients all the time, when you're starting out, it may feel impossible to have your arms in that position. They may want to flare out naturally. It's just because you're not quite strong enough yet. So working on progressions is going to be your friend. And then finally, I just wanted to touch on range of motion. So when we do a push-up, we want to think about bringing our chest down towards the ground. And a good rule of thumb is to think about having about an inch gap between your chest and the ground before you push back up. Okay, so we've got the correct form now. We need to work on actually being able to build up the strength to be able to master that first full push-up. Now, this journey can take a little while, but there are loads of different progressions that you can use. And we're going to start with the one that we see probably most commonly, and that is knee push-ups. Now, inherently, there is nothing wrong with knee push-ups, and it can be a really good place to start. I know it's definitely where I started. In fact, I started against the wall. However, I have some better options for you, which we'll cover in a second. If you are going to do knee push-ups, you can start here with box push-ups. So you want to always think about having your shoulders stacked above your wrists, and then as you get stronger, you can extend out, put your knees a little bit further back, and add some more weight to your arms. Now, the reason why push-ups on your knees might not be the most optimal is because to go from your knees straight up onto your toes is going to be the only progression you can really do. And that is quite a big jump in terms of the amount of strength that's required. So a better option might be to do incline push-ups. The concept here is that because you're able to do it on a higher surface, it's not going to require as much strength, but you can still practice the full movement and also work on range of motion. So with this exercise, the higher the surface that you're pushing off, the slightly easier it's going to be. So like I said, I started on the wall, and then as I got stronger, I gradually decreased the height of what I was pushing from. Here I'm using a plier box because I'm in a gym, but if you're at home, you can use a kitchen counter, a banister, the side of your sofa, the corner of your bed, even your coffee table, and you can keep lowering and lowering the height until you get eventually to the ground. Be patient because this can take a little bit of time, but eventually you will get there. And once you start to feel that incline push-ups are not challenging you quite as much as they were and you've dropped the height a lot, you can start moving on to something that we call negatives. Now, negative training is where we do the eccentric or the muscle lengthening part of the exercise only. So we're ignoring the up phase in the push-up, we're just coming down. And what we want to do is we want to do it in a really slow and controlled way where we're focusing on the muscles that we're using and also on our form and range of motion. Now, if you can't do this on the floor, because again, this can be really challenging, you can of course start this on an incline, and just as you get stronger you can drop that incline until you eventually can get to the floor. Eccentric training is a really powerful tool for loads of different exercises, so I would definitely recommend this, especially when you start to find that those incline push-ups aren't quite as challenging as they used to be. You want to aim for around 4 to 8 slow seconds down, and obviously just coming back up on your knees. Think about having slightly smaller rep ranges of around 3 to 6 reps, and also taking a slightly longer rest time just because this is quite taxing on your muscles. Eventually, if you continue working on the right progressions, you will be able to do a full push-up. It just takes time, so again, be patient because it took me the best part of a year to be able to do them, and even then, my form wasn't great. Be patient and enjoy the process because you'll only be a beginner once. Okay, so let's move on to some common errors that we potentially see when we're doing push-ups. And the first one we've already touched on, which is having flared elbows or elbows coming out too far. Now, when you're a beginner, you are going to probably have this happen. And inherently, there's no massive issues with it. However, over time, if you were to continue doing this, potentially there could be a risk of injuring yourself or getting a little bit of a niggle. And obviously, we want to avoid that. So you want to think about bringing those elbows in to around 45 degrees or less to your body. If this feels like it is literally a physical impossibility, it probably just means strength is just not quite there yet. So I would suggest just jumping back into a regression using some of the incline push-ups or maybe negatives and building up your strength until you feel like you can have your elbows in the right position. Number 2 in the list of things that we commonly see is no intra-abdominal pressure or tension in the body. So you can see my belly is drooping towards the ground. Sometimes this kind of looks like you're dipping and rushing your reps as well because there's really no tension. Now, while we think of push-ups as being an upper body movement, it actually is a compound movement. That means it's lots of large muscle groups and multi-joint. So we want to think about switching our whole body on and creating that intra-abdominal pressure that we spoke about earlier as well. To do this, we're going to get ourselves into that high plank position, tuck our tailbone under, and then think about creating that pressure by imagining someone's going to come and punch us in the stomach, and we're going to brace for that. And we want to try and maintain that the whole time. Now, the art is, over time, to learn how to also breathe at the same time as doing that. With push-ups, you want to breathe in on the way down, and then a nice big breath out on the way back up again. The final error that we often see is just speed and using momentum to push back up again. The goal is to have nice controlled reps where we can pause at the bottom and push back up, relying on our strength and getting that full range of motion. If we rely on momentum too much, we're just really not making the most of the movement. To negate this, you can do something called hand release push-ups, which is where we come down to the ground, lay our chest on the floor, raise our hands just a couple of centimeters off, and then push back up again. Again, thinking about creating that intra-abdominal pressure. Now, something that I hear really often when doing push-ups, or to be honest with you, a lot of calisthenics training, is that you get sore wrists when you're starting out. And I still get sore wrists every now and again. Now, the good news is that over time, they will strengthen up. But in the meantime, if you want a quick solution, I would suggest grabbing yourself a pair of dumbbells, or if you have access to them, some mini P-bars, and using those instead. This allows your wrists to be in a stacked neutral position, which is going to take a lot of pressure off as you start to build the strength up to have them in that extension position. Additionally, you can do some wrist exercises. You can find loads of these online, and there's some great channels on YouTube as well where they'll be able to show you some of these exercises just to help strengthen them up. But as I said, naturally over time with planks, push-ups, handstand training, you're going to find that they strengthen up. And of course, don't ever skip your wrist warm-up. We are putting a lot of pressure through a pretty small joint. Make sure that you do spend a little bit of time at the beginning of your workout just to give them a little bit of a run around. It doesn't have to be anything spectacular. You can just move your wrists in different ways, placing a little bit of body weight into them, a bit of extension, a bit of flexion, and really whatever feels good, just to make sure that you are prepped and primed, ready for your workout and keeping those joints nice and safe. And that is it. Push-ups are a fantastic exercise to work towards. It is really one of those fundamental exercises in calisthenics that once you master, you can take so much further. And there's loads of cool progressions that you can do, such as deficit push-ups and starting to play around on rings with instability as well. Like I said, be patient with your training. It took me the best part of a year to be able to do push-ups, and from there, it has always been something that I've been working on and trying to get better at all the time, and there's always going to be ups and downs. So enjoy the training. Like I said, you're only a beginner once. If you're looking for any more programs or inspiration or some more tips and tricks, there's plenty of videos on my YouTube channel. I also have a workout app with programs, ebooks, and also online coaching. So check out the links below if you want any more information. Otherwise, happy training, and thank you so much for watching this video. I will see you guys in the next one.